Welcome to the Aging Well podcast, where we explore the strategies, innovations, and real-life stories that help us live longer, healthier, and more meaningful lives. I am your host, Dr. Jeff Armstrong. My guest is someone who embodies resilience and innovation in the face of life's greatest challenges, caregiving. Shauna Sweeney is a former Meta executive who transformed her personal journey caring for her father, diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's, into a groundbreaking solution for millions. As the founder of tendercare, an AI-powered platform, Shauna is helping to ease the emotional and logistical burden on the 54 million Americans providing unpaid care to loved ones, a role that's valued at nearly $873 billion annually, but comes at an enormous personal cost. Her work has been featured in Time, Business Insider, and the Huffington Post, and her powerful story was captured in the short documentary Sweeney's Rock. Today, we'll explore the intersection of technology and caregiving, hear about Shauna's own strategies for maintaining her health and well-being, and discuss what strategies are needed to better support caregivers everywhere and age well. So Shauna, welcome to the Aging Well podcast. It is such an honor to have you with us for this episode. Can you take us back to the moment your father was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's? And how did that experience shape your path personally and professionally?
Such a good question, Jeff. Man, that's a hard one for me to go back to mentally.
Yeah, I dive into the hard ones first.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, you're really getting me right into the offset here. I was in New York at the time. I was working at Facebook. I was in a meeting. We knew something was going on. My dad was a ship captain over in San Francisco. He's a bar pilot. And so, I had actually been the one to urge him to tell his doctor that there might be something going on. His stories were getting a little longer winded. He's having a harder time managing through some of the things that were no problem for him before. So that was a long conversation. He went in to the neurologist, and my mom was with him at the time. And then I remember getting all of these calls ringing up on my phone, and I couldn't pick up because I was in the middle of a meeting at work. But I knew something was what had happened was that my dad had been diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. I really didn't know much about what Alzheimer's was at the time. But what my mom told me is my dad had taken off from the doctor's office. We didn't know where he was. It had been a couple hours. And it was just really scary. It was really scary for a few different reasons. I didn't know anything about this illness. I also just didn't know where my dad was. So clearly this was really bad. And I felt pretty powerless because I was across the country at this point. So even if I wanted to help, go look for him, I couldn't. Luckily for us, he turned up about 14 hours later, but that was with our whole family and friends searching for him at the time. And that was really my hard start introduction into what it means to a family living with a member of your family with Alzheimer's. I was remote, 3,500 miles away, and I was sort of numb to the entire experience at that point. You're walking through a little bit of a daze or a fugue state, if you will. I've heard so many other family caregivers talk about this because you don't know, you're kind of in emergency, but you don't really know what kind of emergency you're in. So it feels very strange, where you're in a high stakes moment in time, but you have no idea what bad thing is coming for you and from which direction. So that was really my entry point. It's been 13 years now. My dad Mike, we're very, very close. He's still living at home in the house I grew up in back in San Francisco. I have been his primary caregiver for the past 13 years. I'm super proud of that. And we figured out a pretty good system. My dad is just a fantastic partner in all this. He's so brave, and we're, knock on wood, hopefully going for 13 more years of this. So we have a lot to say and to share about what this experience is like for so many other families.
Yeah, and I want to dive a lot deeper into that story. It's fascinating. There was really almost no sign that he had dementia, and just had an instant where he was lost for 14 hours.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's emotional. It's emotional too. So I think some of this was processing. What does this mean now for you when you're sitting in that pilot seat and you've been given that news? Right. What does that look like? How do you want to spend your time? I have tremendous empathy for anyone who is on the receiving end of that.
And we're going to dive a little deeper into the story, but first, what does it mean for you to age well?
I have always looked at aging a little differently than I think what mainstream ideas around aging, which is, I think delay as long as possible and really hold on to youth for as long as you possibly can. My first babysitter was my great grandma. Her name's Grace. She lived to be 102. And so my first
Wow.
best friend, I like to say, was already in her early 90s by the time I came into the picture. And she was just a phenomenal woman. I really didn't see her age at all. Obviously, physically, we looked a lot different. I was only, 6, 7 years old, and she's 9. I really just understood her as this incredible human being who I just happened to be lucky enough to have in my family. And so when I think about aging well, I always think about Grace because she lived her life so beautifully, principled, based off of spending time with family, having her independence. And I think a lot about that in how I think about my own aging. I think that this is a chapter of life, just in the same way that when we're a teenager or we're in our college years, and it's something to be embraced and to be met with enthusiasm and not to have any shame around it or to be thinking about how you delay this. We can't, this is not an optional, but I think there's a lot of
Right.
ways to go about it with dignity and with independence and real confidence in aging that I would love to be, I would love to have more people perceive this chapter of everybody's life through this lens, because there's so much to be gained, I think, when you look at it through a positive mindset.
And I think that's what we're trying to accomplish here on this podcast. Hopefully, we're doing a better job of it.
You're doing great.
Oh, thanks. So, what are some of the biggest challenges you faced early on as a caregiver? I mean, for one, you were across the country, but how do you navigate these challenges?
First, I think I didn't have words for it. Language, caregiver, it's kind of a muddy definition, in our society. Does that mean this is your job? Does this mean you're a parent? I really didn't know what it meant to be leaning in to take care of my dad. I was starting to join every doctor's appointment. I was flying back every couple of weeks to check in on him. I was reading up until like 3, 4 in the morning on Alzheimer's and what to expect and some of the stages that we were going to be going through. But I really didn't know much about this. You don't go to school for family caregiving, especially when you're taking care of someone with a chronic illness. So it was a lot of education that was very informal in the very beginning. I went in under the expectation that many of us, when you get sick, the thing that you need to do is just get a great doctor. And then once you've got a great doctor, they're going to give you some medicine and then you're going to be good and you're right back out on the field. What I quickly realized with Alzheimer's is that is not how it works. You are in a neurologist appointment once every 6 months, sometimes for about 15 minutes, and then you are back out again. And the biggest question at that point was, what am I going to do with my dad? And how am I going to be the best daughter I can and show up for him for those 5 months and 3 weeks, outside of the doctor's office. And so I had to apply a lot of the same lessons I've learned, growing up, building teams in big tech. How do I think about my team, my staff? What are the roles and responsibilities that are going to be necessary across my whole family in order to make sure my dad is safe? Very hard to do when you're living in a different state. You're dealing with different time zones. You're not there, so you can't see if something new is happening. So I was living a lot with that guilt. Like, man, what happens? There's like something new that develops and I'm not around to see it. Do we have enough checks and balances in place to step in to make sure that my dad is safe? How do we make sure that he's feeling good about this whole experience? It's a very rocky emotional road to go down. My dad is super independent. So things like taking away the driver's license was a big devastating for my family. And then it brings all kinds of new challenges, which is like, okay, great. If my dad can't drive, who's picking up the groceries? Like, how is he getting to his doctor's appointments? How does he have any sense of independence? So we got him a bike. Like, you start to do all these sort of like mini problem solving solutions to try and stopgap a lot of the ripple effect of what happens when you're caregiving from afar and when you're, really on this journey together. I think if I had it to do over again, something I hear thousands of different caregivers who are now on our platform at Tendercare say is, I just wish I could have been a little easier on because at that point, You really think it's just your family. You don't realize you are actually in this experience with millions of other people. You think this is just a bad thing that's happened to you. And when bad things start happening, you don't realize, hey, this is actually expected. This is part of this process. You think it's because you've made a bunch of mistakes and that you just weren't a good enough kid. You weren't smart enough. You didn't research enough. You didn't put enough checks and balances in place when really, there's no A in this. There's no, if you do these 4 things, everything's going to be perfect and just the way it was before. You're actually on a progressive journey. And, what you're going for here when you're caregiving is the best possible outcome that's going to be realistic across your family, across your loved one. That's a very different mindset than the way most of us live the rest of our life.
And so that leads us to tendercare. Tell us about tendercare. What inspired you to create it, and how does the use of AI support family caregivers?
So tendercare is the single one-stop shop for a family who is embarking on a journey of modern caregiving. It is a set of tools to get educated on what it means based off of conditions and family dynamics to be a caregiver, to be leaning in as a family unit and taking care of someone, a set of tools to get organized, store all of the important information you are going to need as a caregiver and as a family along the way. Things like health insurance information, social security, where does your loved one bank, what documents or legal, paperwork has already been filled out, what insurance policies do you have? These are a lot of different disparate pieces of information that actually all come together to help a family make very smart decisions. And then it's a number of different assessments and guides. There's different parts of caregiving all along the way. I mentioned a few. Well, when is it time to take away the keys? When is it time to think about moving? Because, mom or dad's home is no longer the best possible place for them to stay safe. There's too many stairs, or it's really hard to get in and out of the shower. What are some of those checks and balances and assessments you can take to know the right moment in time to really come together and have some of these discussions? And then how do you just stay on top of the flow of this? So much of this is the daily parts of making sure you're not missing a dentist appointment, making sure that you're showing up and you've got, all the coordinated travel for, an upcoming doctor's visit. And then on the other side of the spectrum, every once in a while, there's an emergency, something happens. There's a slip and fall. There's a reason to get to the ER really quickly. How do you make sure that everybody is prepared? We've got the right information. So, doctor can move really quickly and give the best care. All of this is on tendercare. It's really the set of tools I wish I had when I first started. This is really trial by error, be like, wow, this would have been helpful at that point in time. And so how do we make sure that this is a little bit easier for everyone else? We're also in this moment in time, which is so exciting, which is, we're in the midst of an AI renaissance where we are looking at being able to use technology to solve very complex, very personal, unique problems with incredible precision. We couldn't do this before. And so it's so exciting to be able to bring AI to this particular experience, like very simple, pragmatic, like tools. We're integrated with Medicare, for instance. And so to be able to, in a few clicks, ingest all of your health data, your medications, your past visits, your primary care physicians, that's just specific to you or your loved one, and then immediately start applying all the checks and balances against databases of like contraindications for medications, like really great, strong gerontologist approved care tips on top of what is very unique and specific to your loved one. These are some of the ways AI can be sprinkled throughout this experience and this information that just makes the tools that we're building today so much more powerful than they could have been, just a couple years ago.
Yeah, when we started this podcast, we're in our 4th season. My co-host and I, Corbin, we were kind of initially looking at, the world really needs some kind of almost like an Angie's List for aging. And, started kind of exploring those ideas. We had, and programs like tendercare have thankfully kind of stepped in there because we were like, I don't have the technological background to be able to figure this all out. And just the explosion of technology and information has just occurred in that period of time. It's just amazing. And
you're speaking my language, Jeff. Yeah, Angie's List for caregiving is exactly what's needed. So many of us we're families that were spread out from each other. We're living in different places. Word of mouth is harder for us. And so how do you really quickly find the best trusted services in a specific area that you can feel comfortable putting into your own home, your mom's home, your dad's home? You need that really quickly. And so one of the things that has been most exciting for us is a trusted services marketplace that we have rolled out, started on the East Coast, rolling out across the country, of like vetting all of the different services, senior move managers, elder law attorneys, right? Care concierges. How do you make sure you know what the best are? What are the criteria for looking for the best? Those like local heroes who are doing incredible above and beyond service. And then how do you very quickly surface that to, a group of people that may not even know the name of that service? Senior move manager, that's something that I learned along this journey. So how do you make those connection points for a family to feel really good about the choices they're making? It's one of the things where we've seen, quite frankly, the biggest demand and also the biggest opportunity on our platform.
It would seem like so many families don't know what they don't know. It's
Yeah,
like
we didn't
they
go
have
to
no
school for
idea that
this.
they need a certain service.
Yeah, exactly. You know what the problem is. It's kind of like, I like to think about it almost like calling 911. Right? It's very clear something is not going well and you need to bring in some outside help, but it's not really on the family, I don't think, nor should it be, to know the exact name of all of these different services. I think it's just important to focus on giving great care to your loved one and flagging that you need help when you need it. That's really where we've built tendercare to step in and immediately do a very quick assessment, kind of like that emergency call, to then immediately suggest, hey, here is what we think is really going to help you right now. It sounds like you need home care. Here's the difference between home care and home health. Here's what you want to look for in a really great home care provider. Why don't we go ahead and connect you to 3 or 4 that match a lot of what you're saying is going to be the most useful for your family.
And so can you share a real world example of how tendercare has helped ease the burden for a caregiver?
We just, we're getting these stories all the time. It's like my favorite part of the day. We get feedback. We've got thousands of families who are on our platform. We just got one actually from one of our amazing family caregivers who are on the platform. She has actually started using tendercare not just for her parents, but also for her kids. She's got college-age kids. Most family caregivers are usually kind of what you call sandwich. They're in the middle. They're usually caring for many people. There was a car accident that her daughter was in, and she dropped everything. She was on the way to the ER to make sure that her daughter was okay. Realized very quickly they didn't have any of the paperwork that they would need in order to be able to go in and give the doctor all the background information on her. But they were about to turn around. It was about 30 minutes away, their house, and go back and get all the paperwork, because that's what normally you'd need. You need all the medications, everything. And then she had forgotten that she actually had all of this on tendercare. She had built a profile for her daughter, realized she had all of the paperwork copies, all the summaries, the health insurance cards, realized she had that, and they just kept going to the ER. Luckily, everything turned out. Her daughter was fine, but that's just like, that happened yesterday. So a really great example, real world, of where, when we're doing our job over on our side, we are there at the moment when you really need us. And it makes a big difference in that moment. You'll know it when it comes. And so we're really proud of serving that role.
You've initiated this company to best serve seniors and aging adults as they need care, so families can caring for the older adults. Are you beginning to kind of see an opportunity to kind of extend that to the younger as well? Is this something that's going to be growing, or is it something you're already working on?
It's a great question. We listen to our families who are on the platform, and we've watched, we started with just the single simple use case of taking care of mom or dad. And then there's been this overwhelming sort of response back of, oh, this can also be used to help me take care of myself in the case of something going wrong, in the case of my kids. So we've made many of our tools multifunctional for those purposes as we're following what our families are asking for. One of the most interesting parts that we've seen has been as caregivers go through the journey of helping take care of their parents, it immediately starts lighting up this idea that they want to put everything into one place and get everything settled for their own kids. So self has actually come up as a really important piece for us to consider how we build out and expand. How do you actually, now that you become a little bit of a graduate in caregiving and this chapter, apply those same lessons to how you think about giving a gift to your own children, getting a lot of this set up ahead of time. So we're seeing both of those use cases. We still focus primarily on helping take care of mom or dad. We think like we can do the most help by bringing sort of a set of services and tools to the millions of people who are just starting that journey. But we find very quickly, as many of our families go through a lot of these different workflows and get organized, they want to stay on the platform and they want to start using it for thinking much longer down the road and being much more proactive.
Yeah, I see this exploding in very short period of time, I would think, just with AI and just with technology and just with the need that is out there in our community. This could just be such a useful tool for so many people.
It's an honor to build technology like this. I've been enamored with technology for a very long time for I think its strengths, which is that if you build the right tools for these very critical moments in time, you can now improve the experience for millions, if not billions of people, right? The influence that you can have on just making some of these experiences more positive just hit so much scale. It's really exciting to think about, not just improving what this is like for your own family or for your own community, but for so many people who have not even started this work yet, what this is going to look like as they start to confront a lot of these same situations and conversations down the road. So yeah, we're really excited to be there and to be of help and to be of service and to make this a little bit easier.
Caregiving can really take a serious toll on us physically, emotionally. What are some personal strategies that have helped you maintain your own well-being while caring for your dad?
If I'm totally honest, this was really rough in the first couple of years. I was in a really dark place. I've mentioned this. I felt like a lot of this was my fault. I was so mad at myself for not doing a better job. There's a couple instances where I missed some mail. That was my dad's health insurance renewal. Because I was in New York, California. I was so mad at myself for jeopardizing his health insurance. And, why didn't I set up a system ahead of that? I was so mad at myself when I didn't realize he had been taking thousands of dollars out of the ATM every day and then losing it. And why hadn't I thought of a system ahead of that, to make sure that he wasn't losing his money? So I was not in a good spot. Just trying to stay afloat at work, praying I wasn't going to get fired because I was having to step in and out of meetings when the doctor would call because you didn't know the next time you were going to get a chance to talk to the doctor. So it felt super disruptive. It took me a while to get to a really strong and resilient place. So I can't tell you that there was just this magic switch and everything was great for me. I'm 13 years in, so I'm lucky enough, I had enough time to kind of figure some of this stuff out. I do think, mental health is huge. We lose ourselves as caregivers in the identity of those we're caring for. We're taking care of mom, we're taking care of dad. You forget to book your own dentist appointment. That's the last thing on the list that you're going to hit. And that adds up over time. When we talk to, those who've been at this for some time, their biggest advice is be kinder to yourself in the beginning. We never listen. It's the psychology of those in the family. Everybody's got one who's the first one to show up when something's wrong. We don't listen, but, now I really feel like it's part of my duty to really go ahead and carry that message through. Anyone who's going through this, it's okay. Take the moment for yourself. It's, in the long run, going to be so much more important that you stay in a really good spot. This is an ultra marathon you are on. You're not going to be able to get through that to-do list and have everything perfect on the other side. Very important to make sure that you're making time for yourself in all of this so you don't burn out.
That was going to be my next question. How do you balance the demands of being an entrepreneur and a caregiver without burning out? Do you have any other secret strategies or things that you do just to kind of, that self-care time that we need when we're under a heavy burden of having to care for others?
I mean, Jeff, it's crazy. I've got 4 kids. I 5 minutes before this podcast, I had my 4-year-old, unfortunately not feeling well. She's throwing up, trying to figure out on one hand, getting like a pediatrician appointment today, figuring out last minute care for her while trying to show up for work on time. It's not easy what happens outside of the screen. I think a lot of us are feeling that way. So I actually think it's more about just being giving ourselves permission to talk about it. There is no perfect outcome or world in which you're going to set up a system in which you are going to have 36 hours in a 24-hour day. It's not possible. And the reality is we're being pulled in a million different directions. I think having a little humor about it and grace and forgiveness for ourselves is really the most important part. And then the rest of this, is solvable. You figure it out along the way, but we're all in it together. We're all experiencing this, the crunch of modern life. It requires all of us to be superhuman, which is just impossible. And so I think it's just being realistic about it and, taking your wins where you can get them and just understanding, you can fight another day, and whatever you didn't get to today or whatever wasn't perfect, it's going to be okay.
And it seems like there needs to be a certain sense of vulnerability there that, you said we're all in it together, and we are. And I think a lot of people in that position of having to care for, their parents and their kids at the same time, they want to be superhuman, and they don't realize that they don't have to do it alone. And that if they just let people know that they need help, that could be a huge benefit to them.
Yeah, asking for help is a skill, right? Being able to really put that out to your family and your community. It's not something we all feel comfortable with. We're scared. We think that we're going to come off as needy or demanding, or people are going to be annoyed, or it's not, don't even bother. People are too busy. You don't want to, disrupt them. It's really important to refine that muscle. Like really just try, experiment, ask for help with a couple things. You'll be so surprised how many of your community, your network, your boss, your workplace wants to help if you can really articulate it. It's the most incredible, liberating thing to realize you're not alone in this. It takes a while for everyone to come to that point where they realize, but once you do, it becomes survivable.
So what advice do you have for someone who's just starting their caregiving journey and already feeling overwhelmed?
It's overwhelming right at the very beginning. It's so overwhelming. First, I think you're not the first to go through this. This is part of the human experience. And so there is so much advice and wisdom that's out there on the internet, in books. You come to tendercare. There's a whole community on tendercare of those you can talk to who've been through this before. So really just getting your grounding in knowing this is something that many others have experienced, and you're going to be okay, and you're going to slowly learn what you need to ahead of time. I'm also a big proponent of therapy. I think whatever sort of like therapeutics you need, whether it's talking to somebody else, getting out into nature, having a 10-minute walk, really just getting your foundation strong as you go through what is ultimately like a pretty destabilizing or initial process. Very important to build that time in for yourself. And then just remember that there's all kinds of companies like mine, like tendercare, who are out there trying to actively build tools to make this easier for you. So come in, check us out, see if what we are able to offer really helps get you grounded and give you what you need to have a solid foundation for what will hopefully be an actually like very positive and life-changing experience. I say this and it's so counterintuitive, but Alzheimer's has been an incredible teacher for me. It has brought out the best in me as a human being and how to be more empathetic for my family, how to show up and know how strong I am to be able to do some of the work I've done for my family. If you can really see what gifts are coming to you through this, and it's not going to be easy. There's going to be some really hard parts of this. It's going to pull out of you a part of yourself that you didn't even realize was possible, which is an incredibly inspiring thing to be able to sit on the other side of and say, hey, when, it came time, I showed up for my family and I repaid the favor to them for all the kindnesses they've given to me. When things got hard, I was able to dig deep and find the strength in myself to do this. All of that is in front of someone who is thinking about taking on the role of caregiver for their family. And it is an incredible perspective to have moving through the world on the other side of it. So get smart, get connected, get your local support, get the tools you need, and then just know at some point you're going to be able to look back on this and see the gifts in all of it.
I think that's an important attitude. And that's where we kind of talk on this podcast a lot about gratitude with two T's, the attitude of gratitude. It helps us to just recognize that the stuff we're going through and other people are going through it, for one thing. If we just kind of look to the end of the tunnel, there's always some good that comes out of it. And it's very easy to just sit there and say, why me? This is horrible. And, go down all kind of different rabbit holes with that. But, if we just engage with it and let it grow us, I think it's such a beautiful thing.
I so well said. It's so well said. And this whole experience, realizing even just, knowing how to ask for help, knowing that you don't need to be strong all the time, knowing that your family's really there for you and ready to step up, really working through some of the harder parts of relationships. These are all the invitations that this process allows for, if you can see it for that. And so, there is gold in those hills.
And so in your view, what are some of the biggest systemic gaps that we see in our healthcare system in regards to support for family caregivers?
It's interesting. We still treat a lot of what brings someone into being a family caregiver as this very health, medical oriented experience. You start to refer to a family member as a patient as opposed to mom or dad. And I think there is a real flaw in that line of thinking because, so much of family caregiving is just about regular life. It's about groceries. It's about how do you make sure mom or dad has, social activities in their life. It's not about going to the hospital. It's not about the doctor. And so I think right there is a misalignment to what the actual experience is like for a family. It's not all connected to illness and to the second piece is that oftentimes family caregivers are so busy doing the care, they're not great advocates for themselves. So they don't talk about what they need. They don't vote as a block. It's very hard to really put your finger on the pulse of what this community, which is ultimately 54 million families, are really spending their time on because they're so busy trying to get it all done. And so I think there's oftentimes sort of a not intentional, but an ignorance of the huge body of labor that is happening right, underneath our noses right now. You're looking at least 24 hours on average inside of a family that's being spent on any number of caregiving tasks. Picking up groceries, driving to the doctor, getting on the phone, filling out forms to try and get reimbursed or to get, sort of access to different local community resources. So a lot of work and effort that goes into a lot of this. And so I think just the first step is making sure that it's seen. Then you can actually start to create solutions around it. But first, we got to acknowledge that this is actually happening across our country, and it's going to be happening to a lot more of us as, 1 in 5 Americans hit 65.
Yeah, it's scary. I think, haven't looked up the data. I heard it recently, how we've kind of hit a threshold of the percentage of people that are over the age of 65 now is greater than, I think, number of people that are under the age of 18.
That's right. That's right. So there is a huge opportunity in that as well to really think about this chapter of aging and what does 65 and up look like, not just for, the person who's entering into this, but also the whole family that's going to be experiencing this right alongside them. So we've got a lot of work to do in this space, but I'm really energized by a lot of the conversations like the ones here that I'm seeing happening around this. We just I think we gotta keep going and really normalizing a lot of this in order for, a lot of our different larger, industries like the medical, just healthcare in general, the financial industry, to really acknowledge and recognize this. And, on the heels of that acknowledgement, I think comes a lot of empathy and a lot of new tools to just make this experience a lot easier.
So if you can just wave a magic wand and change one thing about caregiver support in the U.S., what would that be?
So many things, Jeff. Gosh, okay. If I got one golden ticket to change one thing, I think I'm going to do something really small. Because sometimes I find that starting with something small leads to something big. So one of the hardest parts of being a family caregiver, I would say, is when you're in emergency mode. Many of us have experienced this when you end up in the ER, you're with your loved one. This is just a brutal experience. You don't know how long you're in the waiting room for. You are advocating, usually fiercely, for your loved one. It's scary. It's really rough. One of the things that I think could immediately just make this experience easier is that in many hospitals where you have a patient who's admitted into the ER, only that patient is given food. And so I can't tell you how many times I've been in the ER with my dad in which I've gone like 8 hours without eating because of hospital policy around this. Now, there is no world in which my dad cannot have a caregiver with him going into an experience like this. And it's amazing how much better a caregiver feels if you have lunch. And so I know that's so small, but I think actually a little kind of keyhole into the bigger problem, which is that, we're there, we're omnipresent as family caregivers, and yet we're not always considered in that equation. And so just the basics, a meal would go a really long way if that became part of, broader US hospital policy in ERs and patient admittance to have, food for the caregiver as well.
And we need to just take that clip and send it out to all hospital administrators and try and change that.
Yeah, give everybody lunch.
It is a very simple, inexpensive thing.
Exactly. We deserve lunch.
All right. Well, let's see. What else? What has caregiving taught you about aging, and both in terms of the challenges and the opportunities?
We're so scared of aging. We're so scared of it. Whether you're a caregiver, whether you're the person who is experiencing this, and we're so scared of it that we delay a lot of the different things we could do to make this easier on ourselves. We put off putting together a will. We don't like to think about what we would want for end of life wishes. This is a scary territory. And so what ends up happening is that you end up with a much bigger problem on the other side. It's reactive. We have to think about these things after it's too late, right? A family is left trying to, argue back and forth of like, what would mom have wanted in this scenario? What were her wishes? We just never got to it because we felt awkward about it. And so you end up with so much family conflict, so much confusion, so much misunderstanding because of that delay. And I think if we were able to approach this with positivity, with enthusiasm, with a recognition and acknowledgement, this is just another life stage, it would make this so much easier on everyone. And there is so much good about advanced planning, about getting proactive, about giving this gift to your kids, of having everything set up with a nice little neat bow for them. And so there's an amazing opportunity there to step up for families if we could just approach it with courage and a little more kindness to ourselves about this process. It's not something you want to, put your head in the sand around. It's coming. So it's better to start early and really embrace this life stage.
Right. And so your story was captured in the documentary Sweeney's Rock, great little documentary. How did it feel to share your family's journey on film, and what message do you hope the viewers will take away from that?
That was just an incredible documentary. Chris Punzalan, he's very talented. And it was an emotional experience, putting the experience of my dad and I on film and sharing that with others. I had to think really long and hard about what my dad would have wanted in this scenario, mostly because at this point, it's really hard to have the same kind of conversation I would have with him as I would have had like 10 years ago. The reason that I felt like this was a net positive to show to others what it's really like inside our own living room, in our own home, walking this journey together, was that one, Chris had been a caregiver himself to his grandma. And he was an avid runner. And so I knew, because my dad was a long distance runner, they would have gotten along famously. He would have absolutely loved Chris. And so it felt like the right person to put, put our story into the hands of, who was really going to honor the experience that my dad was having. I think the reason that I got into this entire sort of caregiving world was because I was motivated by the fact that there was meaning to this experience for my dad and I beyond us. That if we could think through how to make tools, how to make this experience more normalized for others, it was going to be easier for them. And so with that same sort of attitude in mind, I felt like this was worthwhile to put out there. Even if just a few other families saw something of themselves in our experience, it might make that experience a little bit easier for them. But it was very emotional. It's hard to see it. It's one thing to live it. It's hard to see it. I made the mistake of being right about to go into a public event when Chris sent me the first cut of this documentary. And it was about like 3 minutes, and I was outside the room, and I'm like, sure, I'll take a look at it. And, a couple minutes in, I'm just like bawling. And I was like, oh no, this is terrible. I'm about to go into this room, and I'm supposed to be looking professional. And I just, the wheels are coming off on seeing what this is really like when you take a step back. Because it's hard. It's really hard. It doesn't get easier. I'm 13 years in. My dad is so brave, but there is real loss that comes with caregiving for, the way things once were. So, telling the story, I hope that it gives others strength, but it was a big moment for us to really open up our doors and be that vulnerable, the community, and, let everybody see what it's really like inside of our own home as we're going through this.
So with all that you've been going through over the last 13 years, what are you doing to, and this is a question we ask all our guests, so you can't get away from it. What are you doing to age well?
Oh, such a good question. Every summer I allow myself one new project just for me. So I'm not sure if this is about aging well or just about living well, but I look forward to one big project. And this summer, we are putting in a vegetable garden in our backyard. There's so many benefits and studies around being outside and having your feet in the dirt and your hands in the soil and just being amongst the plants and just gardening in general. And so I'm really looking forward. There's an excavator in my backyard right now as we speak to this veggie garden. I'm sure I'm going to be spending like $100 per tomato, versus going to the grocery store. But I'm really looking forward to hopefully thousands of hours of out there in the garden, really enjoying the sunshine and making sure that my life is filled with things that I can look forward to as I age.
Is there really a difference between living well and aging well?
No, there's not. I think it's one and the same. I think it is one and the same. And I'm actually really looking forward to this. I have felt like I'm a grandma in training my whole life. I'm just waiting for my family to catch up. I can't wait. This is really what I'm meant to be. I'm just interviewing for the role right now. So I'm really looking forward. And I think this is also inspired by my great grandma Grace, to being in the same place and hopefully occupying that same role in my family.
I never picked up on the gardening piece from my grandparents. And my grandfather always had a garden. He was always working out in the field, and always having kind of some fresh vegetables and rhubarb pie at my grandmother's. And all
fantastic! See that I need your grandparents.
Yeah,
but the bug didn't catch you, huh? But watch out, it's tricky. Really. Once you get into gardening, man, it's you're hooked. So maybe you're wise to stay away.
Well, my daughter has been bugging my wife to let her do some gardening. So I might have to maybe put some
Uh,
boxes out for her this summer because my
uh-oh.
wife is growing flowers in the box that my daughter would love to grow plants in. So maybe that will be a project this summer, a good chance for us to bond.
Yeah, it's a great activity to do together. It's really fun, and it's wonderful to see all the life stages of, right. We're not so dissimilar, so
No.
it's really exciting to be able to like really see from a little baby all the way up into a full on tomato plant what that process looks like. So I highly encourage it.
Yeah. And that's the process of aging well. We talk in this podcast that aging well begins at birth, probably more like conception,
Mm.
maybe even before conception. But, it's a lifelong process. It's not about, oh, suddenly I'm now 60 or 70 or 80. I got to start thinking about how am I aging? We got to do it early on. And you've brought up a lot of those topics throughout today's conversation that, we can be thinking about these things from early on. We need to be planning. And when we hit those milestone periods or those markers in life, we just got to, hit them with gusto and, with purpose. And I think you're doing a wonderful job of kind of putting purpose into this whole process of aging well.
Oh, thank you, Jeff. I really don't see it as aging. I just see it, to your
Yeah.
point, as living. So I think if everybody can, embrace what this can look like in their own lives, we're all going to be so much better for it. And if we can just bring a little bit of that to those who we serve at Tendercare, then I'm a happy camper. So definitely happy to be part of this conversation and excited for more families to see it through that lens. I think we would all be better off and better served.
And so what's next for you and Tendercare? Are there any upcoming innovations well, you mentioned the summer project, but any other projects that you're excited about?
Well, I'll give you one at work and one at home. We are about a month away from having one more little one join us in our family. I have just entered into the third trimester, so we are actively going to be bringing another member of the family in who will be one day aging well with us. So I'm very excited about that. And then
Congratulations.
thank you so much. At Tendercare, you mentioned the need for something like Angie's List. We're so excited. We have already opened up, a number of different local trusted marketplaces across the East Coast for families who are actively looking for services for family members who are aging. And we're going to be expanding across the country. So a lot of activity at Tendercare over the next year as we start to offer, this directory to everyone, not just the East Coast. So a lot of work and planning have gone into that to make this available for everyone. So keep your eye on us because by the end of 2026, we're going to be available for families looking for any kinds of services all across the country.
I'm excited for that because I'm on the West Coast. So.
We're coming for you.
And I'm not getting any younger. So.
Amen to that. It's a good thing.
So how can our viewers and our listeners connect with you and Tendercare?
Oh, first, I'm always open to experiences, new perspectives. And so you can find me on LinkedIn under Shauna Sweeney. But to try out our tools and services, there is a totally free app that you can download on the App Store. Just look up Tendercare. And then if you want to learn more about us and all kinds of different resources and tools, you can actually find us on our website, trytendercare.com, or follow along with us on social media. Find us on Instagram at trytendercare and come be part of our community. We would love to have you, would love to have your voice, and we'd love to help in any way that we can.
And we'll have links to all that in the description notes.
Fantastic.
You have a Facebook page? I mean, you're a former Meta executive.
We do have a Facebook page as well. Try Tendercare. We're most active on Instagram, which is owned by Facebook. So to your point, yeah. I have definitely built out on the platform, but you can find us under both Facebook and Instagram.
I'm sure you have a little bit better sense of how to use social media than me.
I don't know, maybe, but I often find those who are building community and are out there, they understand how to use these tools best for their community. But yes, I do come from a background in which I really think about how do you create those spaces online for people to gather and to meet each other and to really connect. It's probably the best part of my job, which is really watching the tender community, like the tender care community grow and start to make friends and connect with one another and start to meet up with each other offline, and share their experiences together. That's the best part of my day, when we realize that we have been responsible for bringing different people together to make this journey a little easier for them.
Was there anything we missed in today's conversation that we need to share?
I think you got it. No, just come check us out. We're so excited. We love the feedback. And if you've got any great ideas for new tools or things that you wish someone would go ahead and build for your family, drop us a line. You can find us on the website, and our entire team usually gets back within less than a day. And that's including our engineers, that's including our designers and our product leads. So there is a real opportunity to, if you want something, come to us, and chances are we can make it happen for you.
What's the line from the movie? If you build it, they will come.
Yeah,
it's kind of the opposite now. If you come, we will build it.
There we go. Exactly. Exactly.
Well, this has been a really, really great conversation. I am so excited for the tools and the opportunities that are coming out there for people who have aging parents and they're aging themselves, and need to somehow connect to just have better care for themselves and for others. And so I love what you're doing. Just keep doing it, and just keep aging well, and keep helping people age well.
Thank you.
And living well.
There we go. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening. I hope you benefited from today's podcast. And until next time, keep aging well.